Dooby dooby doo. How is it going, everybody? I think we are live streaming right now. Welcome, everybody, to the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. We are just hanging out here on the Twitterverse, on the YouTube. This is Ro from the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. Thank you guys for your patience. Who else do we got here in the room, brothers?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Well, nobody from nowhere.
Frank and Amy, how you doing? How you guys doing? And I think we had somebody else, Gilster. Am I pronouncing that right? Gilster, or let's see if she shows up here. Gilster or Jilster? Jilster 37 or Gilster 37. And the one and only Mr. Rez. How's it going, Mr. Rez? Welcome to the chat.
Mr. Rez.
So we got Rob from the Jedi Temple Archives, Mr. Charlie Skywalker. Wonderful to have you guys. We'll probably be joined, hopefully, by some other pod people in a few minutes. And all right, Rural Farm Boy, what is going on?
Good Lord, bro. Where is this energy coming from, man?
Right in here, brother. Right in here. You know, it's been a while since we've since we had one of these little things.
No, everyone's good to go.
Yeah,
it's a social.
It's a social. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good.
Faring well.
Starting to go a little crazy.
Yeah, I just wanted to let me see here. Rob ain't here, Charlie ain't here, Ro not here, neither. Nobody's here, brothers.
Hopefully eventually we have Charles not here.
Yeah, so let's see. A glass of 40% proof energy. 40 is too low, man. I am on 62%. 62 proof energy, my brothers. So it is
pure
Tuesday.
Coaxium.
Yes. Stick it in my veins. Stick it in my veins. But you know, I'm just happy to be here. Happy to talk. Just kind of hang out. Oh, I saw a child sighting in the back of Charlie there.
Oh yeah, they're supposed to be in the room watching TV, but you know how that goes.
Gig.
That's awesome. So it's Tuesday, and I don't even know what day it is. It's, you know, all these days are just kind of starting to blend in. You know, usually I've been working because I'm essential. But I took these days off because I was supposed to be in Rhode Island on a shoot, and that shoot got canceled.
Sorry.
Yeah, that shoot got canceled, so I'm hanging out at home for a couple of days. A child sighting in the back of Charlie there.
Oh yeah, they're supposed to be in.
I heard a little echo. I think.
Yeah, I got it. I fixed it.
All right, but yeah, so. Family's driving me
They're
nuts.
in the room watching TV, but you know how that goes. I thought I did. Yep, I did. I'm muted.
What else is going on with you guys?
Oh, another day, another dollar.
I need like 2 seconds. I'm trying to get the YouTube channel up so I can pop the chat out of that and actually interact with our guests.
Oh yeah, that's right. That is.
That YouTube
right.
hates me right now so much.
YouTube, you are a menace to society.
Yeah,
We're watching TV, but you know how that goes. I thought I did. Yep, I did.
That might be me. Hold on.
What else is going on with you guys?
Oh, yeah, still situated.
Yeah.
I need like 2.
I did the same thing here.
All right.
Manage.
Yeah, getting the kids situated for distance learning. Got most of the desks in. Computers will last 2 computers will be up tomorrow, so they can really hate me as a father, because not only do I make them mind the rules of the house, now I have to enforce the schoolwork. So yeah, go me, But no, it's going all right. It's still working from home. They send me work every day. I knock it out in about 30 minutes to an hour, and then kind of play online for the rest of the day and get paid for it. So it's always a good thing.
Nice. David Triana says, "Hey guys, can't stay on for too long, but looking forward to Thursday night." So are we, David. So are we.
Truth.
Truth be told.
So where were you going in Rhode Island?
Where specifically, I can't remember. In one ear and out the other, but
That's Rhode Island for you.
yeah, I know
That's where I'm originally from.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Yeah, so there's a company out there that we're doing some production work, and like I said, it got postponed due to the coronavirus. So we'll probably go in May sometime. Where exactly in Rhode Island are you from?
Providence.
I see. Excellent. Uh-oh.
Oh yeah.
We have a visitor. Trevor Beast 454. How's it going, brother?
Hey.
It's going great. I just saw the DM that you sent me, and happy to join into this.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You know, I was finishing up the first year anniversary episode of the podcast. Brad and I got back together, and we recorded an episode. So I'm putting the final touches on it, and it should drop on Thursday, if everything works out. So just took a break to kind of hang out with you guys and see what else is going on. How you doing, Trevor? How you been hanging out?
I mean, I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. I don't know. I just verified my YouTube account, even though there's only one video on it. But you know, the process was a lot harder than I thought, because it kept asking for a phone number. I kept typing it in, and they're like, "Nope, this is the error. You got to try a different phone number," and it took way longer than it should have. But you know,
What I want to know,
good.
Trevor, is you're in the middle of a pandemic. You're home all the time. Why is your bed not made?
Well, yeah, I mean, well,
No,
because
I'm just kidding.
yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'll give you that, Rob. That is a
There's
good question.
there's no good question.
No, that's a good question. But the thing is, yeah, I don't know. I probably should have, but you know, I just said, you know what, I'd rather hop onto this stream and you know make my bed. Then again, you know, I only make my bed if I need
Ken,
to.
you're just gonna get back in it.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. Okay, I'll be sleeping there in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours from now.
There you
But
go.
who knows? Okay.
So let's. What do you guys want to talk about?
Oh
There's,
man.
I want to talk about your Millennial Falcon T-shirt. That's millennial, right?
Millennial
The
Falcon.
Millennial Falcon. I think that's appropriate,
Millennial
right?
Falcon.
Nobody really owns it. It never works. We're going to
Oh,
alienate
so,
all your millennial listeners.
We teamed up with. I don't know if you guys participated. I think some of you did, but we teamed up with Far Far Away News, and we hold on a second. Peace, Love, Star Wars. And we teamed up with them to do this little thing we called the Quarantine Spirit Week. Last week, Peace, Love, Star Wars had a great idea to do this Spirit Week just to kind of give people something to do during the week. And we formulated a whole week of really cool, you know, goofy little Star Wars, you know, Spirit Week type thing. And Monday was Mando Monday. And today is Disney Tuesday. So in honor of that,
There you
this
go.
is my
Nice.
Star Wars Mickey Mouse, Luke Skywalker pin. And tomorrow should be a lot of fun. It's, I don't know, Rob and Charlie, you guys might have an issue with tomorrow's Spirit Week. It's Wacky Hair Wednesday.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be on top of my head.
That's true.
Leave it to Rob to go to cross that line.
I didn't go there. I mean, hey, you're assuming that's where I was going. I mean, it could have been leg hair, could have been back hair. You never know.
Facial hair.
Excellent.
Facial hair.
That's true. That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. So, what do you guys think about all this Ahsoka Tano news and the fact that she's gonna pop up in The Mandalorian possibly? Now there's some news that she's gonna pop up in her own limited series on Disney Plus. Thoughts, Trevor? What do you think?
Well, I had no idea about the limited series thing. I guess maybe I haven't been paying enough attention. But in regards to Mandalorian, I'm really excited for it. You know, hoping all things go well in terms of the story and how Ahsoka would fit in to it. But and then Rosario Dawson as well. I mean, sounds like a fantastic actress. I still haven't checked like her IMDb to like see, oh yes, I've seen this in this movie that she was already in and stuff. But I mean, I'm hoping it's all goes well in regards to that. I mean, it makes me a little bit more excited for the Mandalorian. I do wish, however, that I would have, been that. I guess the whole public would have been, learned about this knowledge of Ahsoka being in, either through the trailer, like through a trailer of season 2, or just in the show itself, like. Out of nowhere that, but, I guess that's all I have to say.
Could those boots in that episode towards the end, could those boots be Ahsoka's?
I would bet heavily against it.
Right. Just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, if that is, then congrats Filoni and the rest of the, and Jon Favreau, because you would have fooled me if that was. I just don't see her wearing that or like fitting that type of thing with the spurs. Like, it just.
It's more, but everybody had the point. It's more kind of like a Boba Fett thing. You hear the spurs, you hear like that little noise. I a little more though in that episode. I think it would have been nice if the camera started to truck up, and tilt up, and then maybe see, I don't know, that those the weapon, the knives that he has on his boot. That would have been like a dead ringer.
That would have been.
But Rob, what do
I
you
want
think
to be
about?
Cad Bane so bad.
You know what? That could be too. I mean, who knows?
I would love for it to be Cad Bane. I mean, again, so the issue I've got with Ahsoka is it's certainly a risky play. You've got so many people that have that character so tied to Ashley Eckstein and her voice. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because I felt the same way about, Anakin and Obi-Wan, especially Obi-Wan, not knowing how I was going to feel about the transition to those characters within the Clone Wars. And that grew on me pretty quickly. I was pretty happy with how that transitioned over. So I know they can make the transition one way. We'll see if they can make it the other way. I'm hopeful that they can pull it off and not degrade the character at all. But I'd like to see them make it work in the Mando before they really go too far down the road of doing a spin-off series with her specifically.
I spoke to Alex on one of the podcasts, and we were talking about how, he's very apprehensive about bringing Ahsoka into live action because her character, her look, is very unique. Mm-hmm. And obviously we see a lot of people do cosplay, and it doesn't quite look right. I was in the camp of to be able to bring Ahsoka in. I think you have to have a combination of CGI and costume and prosthetic effects. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great opportunity to be able to use technology to once again bring Star Wars in the forefront of filmmaking technology and character development. I think if Lucasfilm does something that'll blow our socks off with presenting Ahsoka in live action, then I think this is the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, she's so athletic and acrobatic too in the animated series, and in order to really sell her, I think that has to translate over as well. So I agree with what you're saying. I think that it'd be hard for an actor or actress without some sort of computer aid to be able to fully sell that.
Would you translate those acrobatics directly from the cartoon to the live action because, as we know, Yoda got some flack for jumping around all over the place when he was fighting what's his name. So
Trevor? I thought you were talking about Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones. So.
yeah, but you know when Yoda was fighting, no, he was fighting the Emperor, and he was jumping around all over the place. But he was,
Dooku in Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
Yeah. There was more jumping in Attack of the Clones than with the but I mean there was in both. So.
And I didn't really mind it. I mean, you know, it's the first time we see Yoda move as fast as we did. I don't know. I guess to some people it didn't look realistic, but you know, there's certain, like I said, there's certain aspects of Ahsoka, the character, that I think they're gonna have to play with. The acrobatics, I think they can definitely kind of pull from the cartoons. I think Rosario Dawson is the perfect like body type, and I think they could really do wonders with her as a character. I also thought that maybe when we first see Ahsoka in live action, it'll be kind of like a hologram, so you can disguise it a little more than just oh hey, here I am. But what do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a brief glimpse that we're going to get in The Mandalorian. I'd say probably the last 2 episodes. You'll get maybe a hologram in the second to last, and then you'll get the full reveal in the last episode of The Mandalorian. I think Rosario Dawson can pull it off. She was in Sin City, the original, and A Dame to Kill For. Very physical movies. She was also in Zombieland 2. So she definitely can get there. Plus, Daredevil on Netflix, she was in as well. She played the nurse that helped Matt Murdock, and she had some physical scenes in there. So she can definitely get that the physicality of it. It's just whether or not it's going to get pulled off with the CGI, the prosthetics, to get that look going. I think it's going to be the real key to it.
Just real quick, I do think it would be cool if her passage through The Mandalorian was her and Sabine kind of on their way to look for Ezra, and they just cross paths.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And they were kind of on their way out of wherever to search for Ezra. I think that would be kind of a cool way to do it. And it would be, I would assume, right around the right time frame.
How wild would it be if the supposed miniseries with Ahsoka is just that? This will be used as a jumping ground, an introduction to that storyline, and then that miniseries, jumps right into it. I mean, I think that would be gutsy to kind of, do a sequel series from a cartoon straight to live action.
Yeah.
I think I would enjoy it though.
Mm-hmm.
It would fit into what I've heard was kind of like in the rumor mill of what if they were to make episode 10 on what that could be. This world between worlds where possibly Ezra and Thrawn are, and they're trying to come back and somehow come across maybe Ben or something. But that would fit in well. You get to see this series where they're going to look for it, and then it culminates in this film where they bring back a couple of the characters from the previous trilogy. And, I think it would work and flow very well, and it gives something that the fans really want to see.
Yeah. But as Frank and Amy say, that bringing a animated series character into live action could get messy. It's one of those things that I think they really have to tread carefully. They really have to be careful with what they do and how they introduce her, and what items or story elements from the cartoons that they bring over to the live action. So we'll see. So we'll see what happens. We got Charles from Conversations in the Waiting Room. If you guys, there's a question in there too. How old is Ahsoka at this moment. And hold on a second. Let's bring Charles in. Charles, how's it going, brother?
Fantastic. How's everyone doing tonight?
There
We're
goes the
doing
neighborhood.
There goes the neighborhood.
If you If you look closely behind Charles, you can see some of his restraining orders hanging on the wall.
Yeah, provided by
There you go.
Tabasco. Thank you very much.
So, Charles, we were just kind of talking about bringing Ahsoka Tano into live action. A little trepidation from some folks, but I think for the most part, we're kind of excited to see her in live action. Hopefully, you know, Lucasfilm will kind of be very careful. I did mention too earlier that it would be a really interesting way to bring her in. Ahsoka Tano is one of those characters that visually she's very complex. So I think, you know, being able to bring technology and makeup and prosthetics to create her, I think would be a key point to be able to bring her into live action satisfactorily. And then obviously the actress Rosario Dawson, you know, people are kind of commenting about that. I think she's a great actress. I've seen a lot of things that she's been in. What say you, Charles?
Well, I think she's a great character, but I think she can, the power that she has as a Star Wars fan favorite now, she could probably quickly, you know, sort of overtake a narrative if not used sort of sparingly, or at least as an enhancement to a plot. So, you know, I think as an introduction, maybe for interest, but also be very wary of wielding such a powerful dark saber that is Ahsoka.
That's true. I can see that. You know, somebody had mentioned that you bring her in, and then all of a sudden it turns into the Ahsoka Tano show,
Yeah,
and you know, we take away the weight of the Mandalorian.
correct.
What are some of the
That's why-
things that you guys would want to see? I'm sorry?
I was just going to say that's why I think it's going to be a brief appearance at the end of the season instead of like a main character, not even really a secondary character. It's just she'll be thrown in there, see how it goes, get the fan reaction to, I guess, maybe the makeup and the look of the character. And if everyone seems to be positive about it, then they'll go ahead and proceed with the next series that features her.
You know, it kind of sucks if that's the case. Then, you know, we already know what's going to happen at the end. We're going to see her, and I would have liked to have had that as a surprise, seeing her at the end of season 2. It's too bad that they announced that. Again, you know, if that's the case, it's just kind of crappy to be able to know that we're going to see her somewhere in there, if she pops up. So I don't know. What are some of the things that you guys like to see in season 2 of The Mandalorian, besides Gecko and Dominic Pace's character? What do you think?
Okay. Well, I can step in. So, I would definitely like to see Bo-Katan, and I think there's a good chance of seeing her, or maybe like a flashback of how Moff Gideon was able to obtain the Darksaber from Bo-Katan, because she had it most recently in the season 4 premiere of Rebels. And we know that Ahsoka and Bo-Katan now, well, you know, have a history of some sort. You know, they met on Karlak, and Ahsoka, you know, sliced up four of their Death Watch members, and then now they're going to have a little bit more involvement in the Clone Wars finale, you know, the Siege of Mandalore. So I'm interested in how Bo-Katan is going to play a role in season 2, if any. But I think there's a better chance now that we can, you know, presume that Ahsoka's near guaranteed to be in season 2. But I'm also wondering about Dr. Parshing, if he's going to come back at all, because we've had him there in chapters 1 and 3, and then he didn't show up at all towards the end whenever Mandalorian came back, and we just had Moff Gideon and the client. So I'm wondering if Moff Gideon and Dr. Parshing have a relationship at all working together, because I know the client and Dr. Parshing does, but it would be interesting to see how that ties in.
Yeah, you know that whole story with the Mandalorian and the Purge. Even I can't keep the story elements straight. There's a lot there. I was watching a video that kind of recapped the whole Purge, siege of Mandalore, Darth Maul and Savage, take over, and that's a pretty long storyline. It was very soap opera-ish, especially when you include Duchess Satine and Obi-Wan, and it's a great storyline, but I think that's one of the storylines that would be difficult to kind of explain to general market fans that have no idea where this story came from. So I'm really hoping that season 2 kind of spends a little more time kind of reintroducing some of those elements if they do decide to go that route. So we'll see. I'm with you though, rural farm boy. I love stormtroopers. I love seeing stormtroopers anywhere that I can. They are one of my favorite, characters in film to begin with. So, hurrah
Sorry, I
for
was
the stormtroopers!
Was answering a question in the chat. They were talking. They asked how old Ahsoka was.
Yeah.
Ahsoka at the beginning of the Clone Wars was 14 and
Yep.
17 at the end.
So doing the math, not to cut you off, but it would be about 46.
Mm-hmm.
About 46 years old. Sorry. Yeah.
My math worked out the same way. Nicely done.
Nicely done.
Okay,
Some of the things that I would like to see, I think I already know how Baby Yoda fits into the whole grand scheme of things, just by watching Rise of Skywalker and reading the novelization and gleaming some clues from there. But I'd like a little more, a little more confirmation from that. I would really like to see how Gideon got the Darksaber. I think that's going to be something huge in season 2. It's and by that time, anything else is just icing on the cake.
Yeah. But again, that's a long-winded background story. So I'm hoping, again, like I said, I'm hoping they kind of explain it well for the rest of the fans that haven't followed the cartoons.
Well, that's the thing I think too, is that the Darksaber is a hugely popular weapon within the Star Wars fandom, people who follow the story, but the casual viewer, like maybe my wife, my family, who love The Mandalorian, have no idea of that importance and the history behind it. So would the Darksaber end up being a B plot to an A plot of Baby Yoda? Obviously, everyone's freaking out over the child. If that's the case, then they're still going to have to deal with that primary storyline that everyone's actually buying into versus this somewhat obscure, cool-looking thing that this guy's holding that 50% or more people don't even realize how important it is.
Right. And I was watching a couple of times. I was watching that last episode with friends that really don't follow, and like half the room like let out a gasp, and the other half is like, "What? What's going on?" So it's interesting. We're all fans, but there's definitely a level of understanding and enrichment that all this media kind of we take part in. But I can't wait for season 2. It's they should just drop it all right now so we can just go out and watch it.
I was going to ask, do you think that they're going to drop it a little bit early because of this? They've already done all the filming is done for it. Now it's just in post-production. Do you think we could see it early?
Maybe. I mean, not counting reshoots, which I'm sure there'll be some reshoots. I don't think there's ever been a project anywhere in the history of filmmaking that doesn't have some element of reshoots. But I think it'd be great. Even if they don't dump it all, because I don't think Disney's the type of streaming service that dumps it all at once. But if we start getting it early, I think that'd be kind of cool. Especially now that Castian and Obi-Wan is being pushed back. Further down the line. We're not going to get anything for quite a while. So that would be a good thing to do.
I mean, they've got a heavy investment in the High Republic coming out in August with a couple of books to bridge us over into it. So, again, you're talking about derailing some of the hype that they're pushing right now, too, if they do release it early. But if everyone's sitting at home still, they've done that for several other series and movies in the past month. So, definitely could be.
Yeah. We'll just we'll see what happens. What else? What's everybody talking in the chat room? Yeah, I still can't. I still can't. I still can't picture the Emperor getting it on.
Oh, don't worry, he didn't.
Yeah.
Have you done the book yet?
I know. I don't.
We won't do spoilers for the book or the audiobook or whatever. But yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
I usually like to see my Star Wars narratives on the big screen first.
Smart. Although that's not really the direction they're going, but yeah. No, I think that I think it'll be interesting to see where they're going to go with the High Republic. I was just making the point that the Yoda Yaddle story is really what they're going for there. They want to explain the child backstory. So we're going to get to see the forbidden love that started it all.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah.
Are you certain it's Yaddle?
Ah, there you go.
Well, I mean,
I'm not talking interspecies. I'm just saying Yaddle in specific. That's all.
I'm just saying she's the only one we know about, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
I know.
So,
there's Yoda Yaddle. There was one other member of their species that got revealed at some point, but I cannot for the life of me remember who it is.
Yipple.
Yeah. I remember that one as well. A little more scruffier looking, a little more wear for tear.
It was a smuggler, right? The slippery Yipple.
Slipper Yipple.
Gotcha.
Yes. So
Let's get this on a different topic. Quickly.
So, talking about, I don't know if we want to go into this, I just had a discussion with somebody on Twitter regarding Rise of Skywalker and how they were just comparing the book to the film and how some of the things that were in the book were a little better explained than into the film. But it's unfortunate because I think Rise of Skywalker should have been a little longer, and because there were some great things in there. There's some great story elements. I think it just didn't. Pieces didn't fall into place for me. I was telling Brad that I bought the Blu-ray disc from Target and I still haven't popped it in. Which for me it's a shame because it's one of those run to the store, get the disc and pop it right in and just zone in. But I haven't done that yet. I'll maybe this weekend I'll get in there. I do want to kind of watch it again. I think I only saw it 3 times when I was out in the theater. I just want to kind of get back into it and kind of maybe take a look at some things that I missed. But I think overall I enjoyed it more than obviously The Last Jedi. I think for me, The Force Awakens is still up there, my favorite of the sequel trilogy films. But even that was like, all right, I see what you're doing here as a soft reboot. Let's get into the nitty gritty. But for me, unfortunately, the nitty gritty never came. So it's just interesting what they're doing with the franchise.
I agree with you with that. In fact, I watched I've actually watched the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy in a row from last night through today, and watching Rise of Skywalker made me really appreciate Force Awakens a whole lot more. I caught a few extra things that I didn't catch that were in Force Awakens that I'm like, oh, this is talking. It kind of circles back around. So I really appreciated that, and I had a much better respect for the Force Awakens after watching Rise of Skywalker at home.
I agree. The same thing
Yeah.
with me. Yeah.
You know, I always joke around and I say that the Force or the Rise of Skywalker is a great sequel to the Force Awakens, but you know, tongue in cheek, it does kind of seem that way.
Well, look, it goes back to what we talked about before, right? That the biggest flaw of the sequel trilogy was that there was not someone putting together a cohesive through line across all three films, which is why it ended up feeling that way. It is okay to have multiple directors handle the different films. We've seen that, or certainly with the original trilogy. It can be done. It can be done successfully. We've seen it with the Marvel Universe, although that's a little bit of a different animal because most of those stories are just derivative of the comic books. But that was really what was missing here, and it's kind of mystifying why that wouldn't have been put in place for something that was ultimately the culmination of a Skywalker saga that had been floating around for the better part of 42 years. And I kind of feel like an opportunity was missed there. And you know, whether you're a fan of one film or another film or all the films, I think they could have all been improved by having someone there kind of saying, this is the overarching storyline that we're going for. You have some creativity, you have some freedom creatively to kind of do some things on your own, but these are the main points that we want to hit because we really want to tell a story. And that's where the miss was there. And that's why it's so divisive. And in a lot of ways, you know, it's over. I'm glad it's over. I'm sad it's over because, you know, the way that it started, I had great hopes for it. At the end of Force Awakens, you know, Rey stretching out that lightsaber to Luke, I'm certainly guilty of having expectations about how that was going to play out. I was reading a lot into Mark Hamill's expression on his face, and I thought he played that scene masterfully. And then when Last Jedi started, it was the record scratch. You know,
we picked apart those last 7 seconds for 2 years, bro.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Didn't
It's-
Ryan Johnson direct that lightsaber scene? Wasn't that his scene?
I don't know
No,
if
I think they went back and redid that. They went back. They didn't do it consecutively, so they stopped shooting on Skellig Island. A little time passed by, and then they all went back to redo that scene just to pick up the story. I think a year later.
Because like Rob was saying, the expression on Luke's face was masterfully played when you watch through to the ending. I mean, if you look at it through the lens of The Rise of Skywalker and the almost slight smile that you see on Luke's face when he says, you know, a Jedi's lightsaber deserves more respect.
right.
It's complete closure of that expression.
Mhm.
And from my experience, I saw it 4 times in the theaters, and the fourth time, before I watched the fourth time, I was able to watch Force Awakens and The Last Jedi before I went to go in and see it. And I could have been a victim of my own wants to find threads all the way back from Force Awakens through Last Jedi into The Rise of Skywalker. But I had sort of moments of where, wow, I can see that, you know, Rey's a potential for anger, her fighting style. There's certain things that you can see within the character development that then follow through, albeit in a smaller sense through The Last Jedi and then into Rise of Skywalker. So, you know, I don't know if that's a matter of wanting to see those things appear, or, you know, obviously we all know at this point there wasn't sort of a master plan for it, but you know, you can sort of pick up those different pieces and say, oh, this could happen in this sense. But, you know, obviously having Palpatine as the ultimate baddie is a huge, huge step. And that kind of planning is somewhat hard to just sort of glance over for an overall narrative. But
Yeah.
I enjoyed them a lot more. Like Charlie was saying before, is that prior to my last viewing, I had a lot more appreciation of some of the threads of the story.
How many times did Pat see Rise of Skywalker? I can't remember.
That would be 3.
Thank you. Just want to get that on the record.
You know, it's funny. I would accept if Lucasfilm came out and said, you know what, we tried something with the different directors and different storytellers. We tried something, and it didn't work to a point, but we tried it. And I think the fact that they were trying to tell us that it was all planned out from the beginning, I think, and again, you know, we're never going to know for sure, but I think now that all 3 films are laid out, we can kind of see that, yeah, I don't think you planned it out from the beginning. So it's like kind of insulting our intelligence, especially now. But again, like I said, if they said, hey guys, we tried something, it didn't work, you know, it is what it is, but let's move forward. We got some really great projects. We learned from this experience. Let's move on. I even think fans that really are on the fence or on the other side of the fandom, if you know what I mean, might actually say, okay, all right, that's fine. Let's move forward. But who knows? As the Joker once said, some people just want to watch the world burn.
It's interesting though, because when you talk about that one voice kind of driving the overall story, and I've been reading the making of books for the original trilogy, and I had not read the Return of the Jedi making of prior to now, and it's just kind of going through some of the working sessions that they had, and even at that point, despite the fact that, you know, he's on his 3rd person directing one of those original trilogy films, it is still amazing to me how much he drove what the ultimate storyline was. I mean, people were willing to challenge him on some items, and, you know, a twist here, a twist there, but ultimately George was really the one telling the story. And really, of the 3 films, the only one that anyone really challenged him to the point where it varied quite a bit was on Empire Strikes Back with Kershner. And that was amazingly successful, but you still have to have that person with the vision who's driving the story that at least other people can riff off of. And that just seemed to be completely missing here. I don't necessarily agree that we'll never know the truth, though, because we know in Hollywood there's always the desire to have these tell-all books. Who knows what happens down the road when J.J. Abrams or Kathleen Kennedy or whoever retire, what they're willing to do. I was talking kind of in our channel earlier today about the fact that, you know, Iger's book was kind of revealing with regards to, I did not know the backstory of Kathleen Kennedy. I did not realize that Lucas brought her in after the final details of that sale to Disney were set. Then he hired her and made her president, and kind of Disney was surprised to find out they had her in there as president. That was not part of the original deal. And that was information I hadn't heard before. So some of these tell-alls are pretty interesting when you kind of see how the pieces were maneuvered. And it's interesting to see what the downstream impacts of some of those things are.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm going to bring in Andrew from Coruscant Radio Underground, another partner podcaster. And here he is. Andrew, how's it going tonight? How are you?
Oh, it's going good. How's everybody doing?
Excellent.
Doing well, Andrew. How about you?
Oh, doing pretty good.
Good.
Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, we're just talking a little bit about post Rise of Skywalker, the scenario with our favorite franchise, and I guess just kind of rehashing some of our thoughts. But Andrew, a while ago we had a little chat about the books, and we talked about brand new Star Wars stories, and obviously what is going on with Project Luminous. And I just wanted to let's pose the question here. Obviously with Project Luminous, the Star Wars story goes back in time. Do you guys feel that was the right move, or do you guys feel that Star Wars should have just kind of started from scratch and brought something new into the fold for fans to enjoy, something way in the future that is not tied to the Skywalker saga or the Jedi lineage as we know it. Trevor, what do you think?
I honestly don't have too much an opinion on the High Republic sort of thing. Like, I'm just interested in this new story. I haven't even really read up on, oh, you have these characters and they're doing this and that. Like, I'm honestly probably the least familiar with this story compared to you five, but I'll probably pick up the book once it comes around or different other things. But yeah, I honestly don't really have too much of an opinion on it, to be honest.
Andrew, I know we like I said, we talked a lot about the books, and I know you're a big reader. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I think the decision to remove a segment of storytelling away from the main timeline, whether it be future or past, I think that they're planning. There's been too many rumors with the Old Republic stuff for there to be nothing there. I still think whether it be a game, a reboot of the Knights of the Old Republic games or books or perhaps a film or TV series, I think that's why they didn't go that far back. So I think choosing an era where they're not going to be there's no plans to make movies in this High Republic era right now. I don't believe. And so I think taking the writing away from an era where they're wanting to do things for the big screen or for TV is an excellent idea for the books, where we can have books written and they don't have to do anything to add material to or feel like they're hemmed in by the storytelling of TV and books or movies, because movies and TV are always going to get preference over books. And I feel like the biggest problem with some of the books that have come out, even though I love a lot of them, some of them have fallen really flat. And I feel like the reason for that is that those books have been, I think the authors had too much put on them, where it was like, we need you to include this list of things and you can't touch this list of things. And then they're stuck trying to figure out how to tell a story without stepping over any of the parameters that Lucasfilm has given them. And so I think that the High Republic era, I hope the stories are good. I hope the new characters are good. Any new worlds we're introduced to are good. I think you could do the exact same thing, and you've got enough writers out there, including some old school expanded universe writers who haven't been brought back into the fold yet, who I know for a fact would love to write Star Wars again. You could do this 1,000 years in the future while Project Luminous is doing stuff 500 years in the past. But I think that the magic of the old expanded universe was that those creators were telling stories in an era where they didn't have to compete with movies and TV.
And Andrew, why do you think that Lucasfilm has not tapped some of those older authors from the expanded universe?
I think they've got some people that they really wanted to bring in, and I think they've just at this point gotten these newer, younger authors they wanted to bring in have at this point gotten preference over some of the older writers. I mean, they did bring Timothy Zahn back. They brought Christy Golden back, and they brought some of them back. Michael Stackpole, I know for a fact from what I've heard him say at cons, would love to write another Star Wars book. And I have to believe there are some others. Like Kevin J. Anderson wrote some great Star Wars books. Now he's really tied up. He's the one carrying on the legacy of the Dune series currently. So he may or may not have time. But so far, they've brought some of them back. But I do think there are others that would come back in a heartbeat to write Star Wars again.
Sure. Anybody else on future Star Wars, past Star Wars? What's best? What's better?
I do just want to tie in. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think they had to go back with the way that the sequel trilogy ended, and with fans' expectations not necessarily being met, if you went forward even 1,000 years, people are still going to want to know what happened to this person, what happened to this storyline, what happened here. You had to go back in order to reset, to to take a break and to distance yourself from whatever mess you made. You have to go backwards into this time period where nobody knows anything really about it, and you can start over fresh. Let that cool off, and you can revisit it later.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, there's a whole group of fans that are really pissed off that Kylo and Rey didn't live happily ever after.
Well, I mean, not even just that, but the way that with Last Jedi feelings and versus the other two that JJ did, and whether or not Trevorrow would have made a better third movie, and you have all these other things that are surrounding the sequel trilogy that kind of chip it away at this legacy that they've already established. So in order to get that back, you have to go back to somewhere that seems familiar and distance yourself from any of the objections that they could have had.
Not me.
So, real fast before this wears off, I want to ask you guys a question, man.
Before it kicked in.
I have heard you guys, some of you guys mention the term fan expectations, and I know a lot of people have used that as an excuse for us fans to like chill the hell down with our fan expectations. But I want to ask you this. How can you expect fans not to have expectations with a franchise that's decades old? I mean, there's so much story and there's so much excitement that is tied together to a Star Wars. How can we not have fan expectations? And how can a company that is in charge of, creating these stories not pay attention to fan expectations? If you're making a Star Wars, why would you not be making it for the fans that have set you up for those decades? I mean,
look, you can't. And the thing is that it's a known trope that's been used over and over and over. It's used in a lot of mysteries, right? Where you get all this information and you're trying to figure out who did it, but they hold back information or misrepresent information in a way that is misleading, and then they spring it on you, and then you find out that you've kind of been misled all along. Well, that works great for that genre, but for Star Wars, when we're exposed to things that are canon and that are kind of mechanics about the way this universe works, and then all of a sudden, just for the sake of storytelling, they go back on that, which is in a lot of ways what people were having issues with in The Last Jedi. To break that or subvert fan expectations is not in and of itself valid storytelling in my mind. To sit there and say my goal for this movie was just to figure out what the fans were expecting at every turn and then do the opposite thing, or to take the general structure that, the knock against Force Awakens being kind of a soft reboot of Star Wars in the sense that it followed a lot of the primary story from A New Hope. It had to be in the mind of Rian Johnson to say, I'm not going to directly mirror what happened in Empire Strikes Back. But if you look at Last Jedi, he took a lot of components from Empire Strikes Back and just scrambled them. We had the walkers appear at the end on a salt planet instead of at the beginning on a snow planet. There were, some side quests that led to bad repercussions in both films. There's parallels between them. So it was the same idea shuffled around, presented differently, and then subverting fan expectations. And that was presented to us as a movie that wasn't a copy of Empire Strikes Back. That doesn't serve a purpose if there's not storytelling going on at the same time that reaches the overarching arc of what's supposed to happen in that 3-film progression. And again, we talked about there was no overarching storyline, so he didn't really have to worry about that. But that was kind of the issue that I had with Last Jedi. It was about listen to the interviews. He talked about the fact he wouldn't be very good at making a film in that tight a timeline. He had concerns about a number of things that were reflected in the storytelling that was what we got to see on the big screen. People love that film, and in a lot of cases, it's because it was visually beautiful. Stunningly beautiful. Well, I need more than that in my Star Wars. Star Wars has always been about story. It hasn't been about the visuals per se.
And George Lucas from the beginning has always said, I can make a beautiful film, but without the story,
Right.
it's nothing.
Right. Now, granted, at the same
And-
time, he was pushing technology.
Sure.
He was successful in the original trilogy at doing that. He changed the industry. In the prequel trilogy, he was on the bleeding edge of technology, and he was just a little bit too far there, and it failed for a number of reasons. Not only was the technology not as smooth as what we've come to expect now, but you've got actors that are not used to acting against green and blue screens who don't know how to emote properly when there's nothing surrounding them.
Yeah,
That wouldn't be a problem today. It was that.
effects served the story at that point.
What was that?
The special effects served the story versus the other way.
Exactly. And so he kind of he became a little bit of a slave to his desire to push technology while telling his story, and it became dissonant. Not to mention, not everyone wants to watch Star Wars C-SPAN. Sorry. Anyway, so not to go on a diatribe.
Yeah, but I agree with what you said. But I for one love the fact that Lucas kind of pushed the envelope from a technology aspect, only because I'm kind of a technology freak. I love that's what got me into Star Wars to begin with. It wasn't the spaceships and lightsabers. It was just the behind the scenes stuff that I craved. I wanted to learn how they did that. I wanted to be able to get into that field and as a photography major and filmmaker and stuff like that in high school and college, that's really what got me into it all. And I following George Lucas from the beginning, even when he did the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles on TV, it's one of those shows that he was spearheading to be able to, it was almost like a practice ground for the technology that he needed to create a kind of an economical film that ended up being the prequel trilogy because of the technology that he played around with on TV on the small screen with Indiana Jones. So I love the fact that Lucas has been at the forefront of technology with Star Wars, and I think I'm hoping that the next incarnation of whatever Star Wars film we get gets back to that. I know The Mandalorian is doing it, obviously, with the technology that they've been using with the rear projection LEDs. And, we've discussed that with Yoshi and Dominic from time to time on the episode. But, I love it. We have a question that I had posed and I want you to correct me, Gilster, or is it Gilster or Gilster? Let me know, G or J. But I just wanted, I posed the question: who would you guys like to see coming in to direct a new Star Wars? Maybe someone that has not been, floated around. And it seems like everybody likes the style of the Russo brothers to be able to come in and do a Star Wars. What are your guys' thoughts on a new director for a Star Wars? Charles,
Well,
what do you think?
I'd bring back a point of from before where you've got a narrative that is somewhat plotted out between, if it is a trilogy, then you've got an able and apt director who can take a story that has a sort of rough framework that gets you from point A to point B to point C. You really shouldn't have that much of a problem. Obviously, they have to be skilled and have a good way of working with it. But through the original trilogy, you can see that you can pass those things off. Yeah, and you've got directors these days with styles, and It my no, what I would say that everyone these days, especially in the social media world, that wasn't in existence for sure in the original trilogy, and to a very lesser degree in the prequel trilogy, where the fandom can have a much strong voice and have that division between people, or at least the community of where you think one director would be better over another. And I purely think that Lucasfilm and everybody who is making products is listening to those comments and that direction, where what is the pulse of the fans? What are they looking for? What do they don't like? What do they like? And they can sometimes fall victim to that. But if you're going to find um, a director who can take a rough framework of a story and get them from, like I said, point A to point B, it's to a certain degree almost irrelevant if they have a skill and they can direct a movie and not blow it out of the water. Yeah, you get style, you get vision, but would that vision and style perhaps overshadow the narrative you're trying to get across? And if we all talk about the story being the important part of it, um, you know, less flash, more story.
Sure. And I think that's a good avenue to pursue on the small screen with streaming. I think Obi-Wan Kenobi might be a really great platform for that. I think films are inherent when it comes to large tentpole projects like a Star Wars or an Avengers movie, where you really got to bring in the crowds with spectacle and lights and flashing and big scenes. Um, uh, I think that obviously there could be a balance there for sure, but Star Wars needs to make billions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you talk about something like Infinity War and Endgame and the Russo brothers. They had an arc that was kind of laid out from a story that built up to a certain point. The thing is, especially in Infinity War, they wove together multiple storylines that were all interesting at the same time in a way where it was a 2 hour and 45-minute film, and it never felt that long.
Right.
And that is a skill that not everyone has. Granted, I mean, again, the thing with the Marvel series is there is an underpinning where there is a story that's laid out in the comics, and of course they tweak that, but they have a baseline to go off of. They have a general idea of what the overall story is. They may change some details, but that's kind of secondary and expected in current filmmaking. Star Wars is kind of an open-ended thing when it goes back to the importance of the storyline. The Mandalorian has nothing to do with Skywalker Saga. Different directors for almost every episode, but you had someone behind the scenes who had an idea of where the story was going to start, the points that it had to go through, and where it was going to end. And I think we all saw how successful that was. And honestly, I think the more that we get away from the Skywalker Saga, the looser that the producers, executive producers and the directors are going to feel in terms of their ability to kind of create these stories, tell these stories without having to worry about violating all these rules that have been laid out as we had with the Skywalker Saga. So I'm hopeful that we'll get to a point where, like the Mandalorian, the fan base is more unified as opposed to divided, and that we have a lot more interesting stories yet to come.
Yeah. Trevor, we got on the horn a while back and we talked a little bit about how you disagreed or at least you weren't too crazy about the Mortis story arc. And I just wanted to ask you what kind of story from a film perspective would you be interested in with Ahsoka Tano? You said you did not hear about the rumor that it might go into kind of a limited series. I just saw a news blurb about that. But what if they did kind of go into that realm? Obviously, Dave Filoni is helming, a little bit of the Mandalorian with the other
Favreau.
So I'm just wondering, what do you guys think as far as bringing the mysticism of what we're used to in the cartoons into the real world, into the live action. Trevor, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm fine with it. I just when it comes to like the Morta stuff, or I guess even you can even say like the Yoda arc and the Lost missions. I mean, whenever like Yoda's fighting Darth Sidious with lightsabers and stuff, like I can tell this is just like a vision of the Force. Like I'm fine with having some like mysticism of the Force, but I don't want it to be too heavy-handed where it just takes up the whole entire story. If that makes sense. Like in The Empire Strikes Back, you have Luke fighting Darth Vader in the cave, and that's just one scene. Like if that was like the whole movie is all this like Alice in Wonderland type stuff, then that's where I'm just less interested. So I'm fine with having just, a few elements sprinkled in, but not too much. And in terms of Ahsoka, like I know it's probably never going to happen, but I'd love for them to just make a movie of the Ahsoka novel itself, like which takes place like shortly after Siege of Mandalore, where she goes off to this very remote farming area, and then the Empire gets a little bit involved, and stuff like I'd love to see that movie, just like I'd love to see even like just like I'd love to see if I'm not okay. I need to get this right, but the Dark Disciple, I'd love to see just even an animated thing, because it was supposed to be 8 episodes of the Clone Wars, and I'm fine with getting an animated movie of Dark Disciple, and that would be like I'd pay a good amount of money to see that. I mean, I know that's going off topic a little bit, but
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I heard him say he's willing to produce it.
Yeah.
yeah, but I also do have a list of different directors that I've written down this like months before, but different
Trevor Beast 454 comes prepared, everyone.
I don't know about that, but I do have, I mean, we did talk about that a little bit earlier, but if you want, I could just start naming the directors that I had previously written on here.
Do it.
Okay, so I said Christopher Nolan, even though I doubt he'd be interested, just like I also said Ridley Scott. I doubt he'd accept directing a Star Wars movie for that. But then I also said Patty Jenkins, most known for Wonder Woman. And then I did say Colin Trevorrow, even though I know he, didn't get the position. And he's probably never going to direct because of those creative differences with Episode 9. But also,
was that Colin Trevorrow calling you on Skype?
No, that's not me. But
Lucasfilm.
But also, I do think George Miller, who directed Mad Max Fury Road, that's phenomenal. I'd love to see what he can do with Star Wars as well. Also, Ryan.
I was fascinated that George Miller was still alive to direct that last Mad Max movie.
Yeah.
What about this? He's kind of a smaller filmmaker, but what about George Lucas?
He's
Bringing an outsider.
Outsider.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then, I mean, also, just from the directors from The Mandalorian as well, like Taika Waititi, I'd love to see him direct his own Star Wars movie, as well as Deborah Chow. And then, so then there's just a couple more that I have. Robert Rodriguez, probably most known for Alita Battle Angel. I love that movie. I think he'd be great tackling Star Wars. Peyton Reed from the 2 Ant-Man movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a good enough job with that. And then I'm probably mispronouncing this name, and this is the last one, is Alejandro Iñárritu.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
He directed Birdman and The Revenant, 2 great movies. So I'd love to see what he can do in the Star Wars thing. So that's it for my list.
No, it's a good list, man. It's a really good list.
I'm telling you, I want a Disney Plus animated series in the style of the Old Republic. I want that backstory with Satele Shan and the smuggler that they introduced. Like, I've never seen any short cutscene type stuff that made me want to know more about those characters and like see a fleshed out storyline. I still, to this day, I'll pull that up on YouTube and just watch like 45 minutes of it.
Talk about Dark Disciple as a film or an animated movie. One of the other books, and Andrew, you and I, we talked about this. One of the other books that I would love to have seen as a movie is Bloodline. I think Claudia Gray has a wonderful grasp of the character, especially Leia, and anything that she does, I think, would be a great, I guess a great start for a cinematic project. Andrew, any other books that would be worthy of getting a treatment as far as a film?
Hmm. I mean, I just, I have a hard time believing anything that crosses over into our current timeline for the saga movies that's going to require recasting. I don't see them going that route again anytime soon.
Yeah.
And there are some fantastic books, but the best ones tend to kind of cross into bloodline. You're going to recast Carrie Fisher right now. I have a real hard time seeing that happening. Lost Stars is a fantastic book, but you don't have to recast anybody per se, but you have to cross into, and you got to get all those events right.
Yeah.
Because it's just another perspective on all the events we already knew.
And again, you don't want to piss off the fans that are familiar, obviously, that grew up at those events. It's kind of a tricky, slippery slope, don't you think?
I don't think that one so much though. But you'd have to de-age Tarkin, but we already know they can do that.
They ignored it, yeah.
Right. But I think Lost Stars would be awesome to see as a film. It would definitely give you that Imperial perspective.
That was the first book I read. Going into the new, I guess what do you call it, the new expanded universe, or the new canon books.
Yeah.
When they first started to drop that Journey Towards the Force Awakens or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Lost Stars was a really good one that was my first one.
I tell you, the one that stands out to me as far as possibly making a movie would be to make something in the vein of the second Battlefront book that Christy Golden wrote, Inferno Squad.
Oh yeah.
We don't have following soldiers. Right. We don't have, we have, we don't have that band of brothers. I would say that Rogue One would be the closest thing we got, but we're still centering around a main character. We're not following this group of people.
Right. Soldiers. Kind of like Saving Private Skywalker.
Yeah. But I mean, there are so many people that I think are out there available that could make a Star Wars movie. But I think that it's the reason I don't think there's any of these books that I'm just dying to see done other than maybe Lost Stars and I think Lost Stars would make an incredible animated series, by the way. But I think it's time to take a break from this era as far as what we're putting on the big screen. I think if you want to hype Star Wars back up, you got to give us something new.
Yeah, and all of us here seem like we're kind of original trilogy junkies. It seems like Trevor Beast he's the younger of the six.
Yeah, I am.
But it's kind of a tricky thing, to bring in something new and slap a Star Wars label on it. I think fans that are as old as us, we're going to look at that with, kind of like a crooked eye and say, is it really Star Wars? So it's going to be, it'll be a tricky thing, I think. But, I'm excited for whatever comes next, and I'm hoping it is new content. But give me anything as long as it's good.
I mean, you ultimately have to pull in new fans.
Sure.
Mandalorian's done that. We were at CalusaCon a couple of weeks ago. We spoke to a guy who had seen the Star Wars saga up to the point, but wasn't a fan and didn't really take with him. He's a cosplayer. He'll do Marvel. He'll do comic book characters. He's sort of right in that wheelhouse of a nerd fandom. But Star Wars never appealed to him. Just didn't really hit with him. but The Mandalorian did. So as an entry point for a story, or at least the Star Wars universe, for as much as any director or Lucasfilm or Disney, for that matter, trying to make a story that's going to appeal to the six of us and maybe everybody in the chat, you still have to make it a wider appeal for people who have 50% of our knowledge and can still enjoy the story and want to see the next one. Because if you do that, you're going to cut your legs from under you and you're done.
Yeah, that's true.
It's interesting too because they've gone with this multimedia approach, right? We've got the films, we've got the shows, and they're doing all this with the books and the comics and everything. But there's a disconnect after reading the Kylo Ren comics and knowing what we know from the sequel trilogy. We've got a situation where in Force Awakens, it's like Kylo and the Knights slaughtered the students, but it's kind of presented in the comics like Kylo pulled the hut down on Master Luke, torched the academy, left, 3 students follow him, they end up getting killed. Does he then go back to the academy and finish off the rest of the students? It just seems kind of strange, the way they've woven that story together and kind of disjointed. And I think it's a byproduct of the fact that the same thing that happened with the original expanded universe, right? You've got so many people telling the stories. You got a story group that's supposed to keep this all straight, but no one can keep that many things straight without an occasional glitch here or there. And I'm just concerned that if they go with this multimedia approach too heavy in the future, that we're just going to end up with another kind of mangled EU.
I can see that. Yeah.
Then you see the guillotine coming down, cutting off the entire Star Straggler story parts, and then sort of rebuild from a starting point again. You sort of then cut out a second generation of storytelling, I guess, at that point.
Yep.
The bottom line is basically, we all really have to be successful with our podcast so we can actually start working for Lucasfilm and then create radio dramas. Because I know, Rob and Charles, you guys are doing fantastic with those radio spots. So radio dramas cannot be too far behind. So
it's our leading female, Pat.
Thankfully, he's working tonight.
He sells it.
All right, we have a comment here. Let's talk about this because this is a good one. To push back, Charles, people only need a cursory knowledge of Mandalorian to jump in. My dad has only seen as few Star Wars movies and loves Mando. Good writing is good writing. I agree. I think, Rob, we had this discussion a while ago, too, regarding all the ancillary material that is out there, all the extra stuff, and take the appearance of Darth Maul, for instance. People in the theater were confused that seeing Darth Maul, was this another Darth Maul or is this the same one? But I think the Star Wars universe is so vast that you really can't separate those mediums and those storylines from each other in order to satisfy or not isolate fans that are not like deep cut like we are. I think if you're going to believe a world and a universe that exists as vast and rich as the Star Wars world, those interconnective tissues have to exist, and I think it's up to the fans to really kind of investigate and really kind of dive deep into what's going on with this character, and let me figure out why I'm seeing Darth Maul here. Oh, that's really cool. I think the notion of going in and creating your own adventure, as far as being able to see the bigger picture, I think that's where also the fun lies in being a Star Wars fan.
We all know Mace Windu is still alive, right? Because you can't kill a Force user by throwing him into a pit. I think if there's anything that's been established, it's that.
Right.
Or cutting him in half.
Or cutting in half.
Cutting him in half and dumping him down a pit. It doesn't matter. They're fine.
That is true. What else, guys?
Yeah.
Well, all I know is I'm doing is I'm writing actually some trivia questions here for Trevor based on the High Republic, so I can feel better than him.
All right. All right. Way to
And-
go, Charles. Okay.
And,
Charles will get you a personalized restraining order.
I
The
need
Star
one
Wars
for
personality of your choice.
I was just actually editing the podcast Sentry Mode segment with Brad. I had shot a couple of questions for him. We're dropping that episode on Thursday. Hopefully, I'll finish by then. You guys will listen. Yeah, it's fun times, brothers. Fun times. Hashtag Mace lives, of course. Yeah. There's there was that fan film that I guess he's still trying to raise money, but part 2 of Star Wars Theory's Darth Vader film. Mace Windu is supposed to be in it, and I guess he's still trying to raise money for that. I wish he was local because I'd totally help him out.
with the editing and producing,
Yeah,
as long as he gives you some planning tips for the back card.
as long as I get to be Darth Vader,
There you go.
that's all I ask.
If you're a little short for a stormtrooper, you got no chance at Vader.
Rob's our resident Vader.
I had Darth Vader at my wedding, and he was displeased that I was taller than he was.
So let's briefly talk about collectibles. Question in the chat: if we got any cool collectibles lately? I don't think I've gotten anything new other than my friends from Michigan sent me a couple of probe droids.
I was just thinking about that. I was thinking, had the timing been just a little bit different, I wouldn't have been able to pick those up. So,
Oh man,
Ro was very generous. He gave me a probe droid of my own for the trouble. So, yeah, I've got to believe for people that are into going out and collecting their Star Wars collectibles that this quarantine across so many states has been a big interruption to their
oh, it definitely
their
has.
usual routine.
I find a lot of collectibles at thrift stores, and I haven't
Right.
been able to go. And I find tons of stuff, and it's crazy. Let's see, Andrew, what do you got? What is Andrew pulling from his back shelf?
So I don't have any new collectibles per se, but in lieu of being able to go anywhere, Marisha's going to kill me for showing. But Marisha's been working on some.
Wow.
What?
Holy moly!
What?
Wait a minute.
And here's where he gets killed.
Awesome.
We may get to see a murder on YouTube.
Just save the video.
This is a Scarif exclusive. That's incredible.
That's really funny, Andy. He says, Rolex. Yeah.
That's what the rubber glove
yeah.
glove stash is for.
Comes in handy during a pandemic.
It sure does.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, multi-talented Marisha. That's
Yep.
awesome. Yeah, so we recently had Aubrey Eden Dukes on the podcast. We talked about her experience with drawing Gecko and how she kind of went in blind just with some some quick sketches and things like that from Dominic. So I love Star Wars art. When she finishes that, I'd love to take a look at that. That is really great. I'm trying to get some other artists on the podcast as well. I contacted the gentleman who draws the concept art at the end credits for The Mandalorian, and hopefully he answers. He answered me back in the fall, and he says when things get not so crazy to hit him up again. So hopefully we'll get to that again.
Yeah. I've got my Yoshi Vu signed exclusive Mandalorian print. I know I got the screen reflection. So again, right is left and left is right, right? So that's my one of my two recent collectibles. I got a signed version of the Rise of Skywalker from him as well, which my wife immediately commandeered for the upstairs bedroom.
I still got to send these other ones out too. So here's again Yoshi Vu signed Mandalorian card, little lobby card. He gave me one for the comic shop, which
Nice.
I would love to frame.
Wow.
Yoshi Vu, Scarif,
Yeah,
Con, 2019.
I like
But
it.
yeah, I mean, I love collecting Star Wars things.
You've been hoarding those all these time?
I have.
Nice. I wonder what happened to them.
Yeah. I think I've got yours right over here.
Sweet.
But you know.
I've been making collectibles.
Yeah. Can I show these?
Well, that's up to you. There are several people
man.
who are.
You're going to make me jealous because United States Postal Service has somehow misplaced mine.
Somebody's got to hum the Mandalorian theme, though.
Just real quick, does anyone know what the USPS motto is?
What is it?
When it absolutely positively has to be there eventually? Which actually we're going to riff on for another Star Wars commercial, by the way. So hold that.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, you guys are doing fantastic. I love those commercials, and I've been able to use them every so often.
Good.
I think I popped one in the latest episode.
I believe you did. I know. I heard one on Conversations. I got to listen to your latest episode, and eventually we'll get a library of them where we can mix them all up. We've already got some other ideas kind of on the back burner. We were waiting for Charles and Pat to get their Skype capabilities locked down, which it sounds like they have, and then the creativity will be running amok.
Who needs jobs?
Who needs jobs? Well, that's the funny thing. I mean, we're sitting here. It's like an hour and a half into our broadcast. Doesn't feel an hour and a half, but I definitely would love this to be like a paying gig. Just hanging out, talking Star Wars, drinking red wine. But Dale Erdman in the chat says, I followed a whole bunch of Star Wars type people on Twitter today. I'm wondering who you followed. And hopefully it's some and or all of us. Let's go around the table here. Rob, what do you have upcoming on the Jedi Temple Archives podcast?
I'm actually going to be for the immediate future. I'm going to be cutting back to every other week for episodes. Weirdly enough, working at home has increased my workload, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get episodes out here for the next little bit. But I know that we've got some episodes coming up about what's going on in the Clone Wars. I know Charles is hard on my tail about doing an episode on the Banking Clan, so I think I'm going to do that just to shut him up. Oh my God, you're killing me. But yeah, I mean, we just always try to stay topical. So kind of as things progress with Clone Wars, we're gonna redirect. We just did the Pike Syndicate, and there's some kind of cool connections between the Pike Syndicate and their spice trade, and Lucas's love of the whole Dune trilogy, which got brought up earlier in this show. So, the spice is all right.
I like the Pikes. They are they have always proven to be formidable foes.
They have.
And I love seeing them in Solo.
Yeah.
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 And you owe me an episode too. We got to get together and
I do
our episode.
I do, absolutely. So we will get that planned. I've actually got a listener that reached out that wanted to come on and join us. So I'm going to see if I can loop him in with maybe an episode I do with Tom upcoming here. So we want to make sure that folks that want to get out there and be a part of the show can be a part of the show as well.
Excellent. Awesome. Yeah.
Trevor Beast 454, Quiz Master Extraordinaire. What is going on in your world?
Not a whole lot as of right now. I mean,
he still has to make his bed.
Yeah, that too. But I okay, so I only have one YouTube video as of right now. Of course, I'm more known for Sporkle.com, being the curator of Star Wars and St. Patrick's Day to a lesser degree, but and then all the like 375 quizzes that I have. But I'm at least going to try to start making my YouTube channel a little bit more, of a thing, I guess I should say. So I'm going to start with reviewing the Orville season 1, even though that's completely not Star Wars related. But then hopefully I can move on and then maybe talk some more about some Star Wars movies, or just start reviewing episodes of the Clone Wars, from season 1 on. Of course, that might take a few months, but that's just what I have in mind as of right now. So
Nice.
Yeah.
And Trevor, I'm gonna direct message you later tonight because I wanted to see if you can record a kind of like an outro that pushes our Sentry Mode segment, but it also pushes where to find some of your quizzes on Sporkle. So I'll send you a script, and if you wouldn't mind, if you can record it for us, and then we can kind of polish that up and use it in the podcast every episode.
all right, I'll have
That
to
would be
respond to that with an absolutely.
excellent. And Andrew, you've got the Science Fictionary. Didn't you guys? You just had a new episode today or yesterday?
Science Fictionary had a new episode go up yesterday, and Coruscant Radio Underground had a new episode go up about 6:00 this evening.
Ooh.
Excellent. It's funny. I do most of my podcast listening to and from work in the car. Since I haven't been, I'm really behind. I got Alex's Salty Nerd podcast is at the top of my list. Probably start that up tomorrow, and then just work my way through everybody's podcast that I've kind of missed. So hopefully I'll catch up by the end of the week. And that should be a lot of fun. Andrew, I'm really interested to hear how Marisha has liked the Star Wars movies that she's, or Star Trek movies that she's been undertaking. So that should be a lot of fun to hear.
Yeah, the one we just posted, we talked about Star Trek 5. And we'll record an episode for Star Trek 6 Thursday night.
Nice, excellent.
And we've started on the X-Files now. So
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's cool. That should be really cool. And thank you guys for sending that little message for our 1-year show. It brought a tear to my eye. You guys are the best. Conversations podcast. Pat and Charles present. What is going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, hopefully Pat's message to you last night put a tear in your eye as well, but tear of joy. But we're going to be publishing part 2 of our Kylo Ren deep dive in 2 weeks. So we started from Ben to Kylo, and then we're going to finish with Kylo to Ben. So that'll be our part 2 coming out in a couple of weeks. And we've launched a new segment that you're scooping here on this here show. We've got a new part of what we're doing, and our first guests were our wives. So that'll be a brand new episode coming out at some point. If we want to stay married, it'll be coming out sooner than later. But yes, it's a whole new approach on how we do things. So it's going to be a supplemental episodes to what we typically do. So that's coming out in the next couple of weeks, or maybe 3 weeks or 4, somewhere around there.
Is it true you're doing part 2 of Kylo Ren topless?
Just call me Charles Swallow.
Now, are your wives fans or not?
To a certain degree. Pat's
my wife wanted to do a show like that because I think she saw Star Wars like back in the 70s, and then that's it. She does not like sci-fi. She's not into fantasy. She likes her, dysfunctional family films, and that's pretty much it. So it would be
Star Wars
interesting...
fits the bill for that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well,
Totally. That's what I've been trying to convince her.
much to Pat's chagrin, my wife is much stronger on Star Trek, and because William Shatner went to her alma mater of Montreal,
Oh,
so there's a
nice.
connection there. So Pat breaks out in hives every time he brings up his name or Star Trek, so it's kind of funny.
Very nice. And I know the other half of Coruscant Radio Underground is not around, but what is Marisha besides painting awesome things and posting pictures of her children? What else is she doing?
Trying to stay sane, being stuck in the house with everybody, I think. But it's she's trying to decide. She's kind of working on some cosplay, but I right now it's trying to decide how far to go and how fast to move forward with some of the stuff she's working on, because our big con is always Dragon Con, and I hope things are going to be okay by then, but I don't know at what point they pull the plug on Dragon Con, because that would be that's a big one. You're talking over 80,000 people that attend that annually.
What month does that happen in?
That's on Labor Day weekend.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hopefully everything will kind of turn back to normal, especially Star Wars Celebration. That's a really big event in Anaheim. I know a lot of people are counting on that, but let's see what happens. Carl is asking if anybody collects the Star Wars Funkos. I have, and I'm not sure, are they Funkos? I've got a Rey bobblehead, which is going in one of our Scarif swag boxes. We'll talk about that as our 1 year anniversary episode airs. I love that one.
Yeah.
That is really, really cool. Let me get the Rey.
Oh.
Oh, blurg.
So we are we're gonna give out our biggest Scarif swag box yet. This will be in one of them.
Wow.
It's she's cute. Look at her big eyes.
That's not a Funko Pop.
It's not, is it? It's a wobbler.
It's a wobbler.
But it's by Funko. See? Funko.
All right.
It's a Funko wobbler.
They're like,
But it's Rey. I think it's a little taller. It's a little taller than a regular Funko, but
for the record.
yeah, I don't actively pursue purchasing Funkos because that's a rabbit hole I don't want to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And but people give them to me all the time, and I don't know where to put them, so I just give them away.
Then you would want to go to Her Universe today because they had a sale on apparently.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Pat's website?
All right. And on that note, thank you everyone for joining us here on our Tuesday night hangout for the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Turning 1 year this weekend. 1 year of awesome Star Wars talk and meeting some wonderful, wonderful people like all of you. Thank you very much. And episode drops on Thursday, so don't miss it. But again, Rob, Trevor, Charles, Andrew, thank you very much. Marisha in spirit. And any last words before we dump out? We also want to, that's the scuttlebutt. We also want to thank everybody in our chat room. Thank you guys for looking for us and joining us, talking to us, and hearing our rants. And that's about it, man. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Ro, I'll get you a clip after this stream.
Excellent. Will it bring a tear to my eye like Andrew and Marisha's?
No.
Guys in the chat, if you have not subscribed to everybody on board here, head on over to Twitter and hit the subscribe and follow button. If anybody has a YouTube channel, head on over to YouTube and check them out. We are Star Wars podcasts, and we love talking about Star Wars. We have a lot of fun, and we love including everybody that follow us. Our big thing is interaction with a lot of our followers and a lot of the people that partner up with us to produce content. We love hanging out and we love doing this. So thank you very much. And that is the Scuttlebutt.
Yep.
Do-do-do-do-do-do. We got to be able to roll some of these fake commercials at the end.
Ah.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.